Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, Easter and Passover are coming up, and it's especially poignant for me this year because your brother, my son Scott, was killed 1 minute before Easter. And I always think years ago, and I always think that the police and the fire department who came to the automobile crash site, I think they put 1 minute before Easter because I think he probably died on Easter, but they didn't want me to have to deal with 2 dates. That's always it occurs for me, but that they were very kind people. But it is a holiday this year. It is going to be around this time that Scott was killed. He was killed on the 2nd, and I think Easter's on the 4th, and then Passover. And Easter's a time of renewal, and Passover is a time of being passed over and blessed. And those are special holidays. And I wanted somebody to come in and talk about how we're going to deal with that. Also, my husband passed away 4 months ago, Heidi's dad. So I'm looking forward to having our guest on today, Heidi. And I know everybody who's watching this are too. So would you like to introduce him?
I would love to. He's one of my very favorite people. His name is David Kessler. I know a lot of people out there know him. He was recently on CNN and did a very powerful spot. David has been on our shows before. He is world renowned. He is an author, a public speaker, an expert on death, grieving, and hope. He has published many books, including 2 with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. His latest book is Finding Meaning, the 6th Stage of Grief, which has won awards and is phenomenal. Hi, David.
I am so glad to be with you. Anything you ever want, I'm here.
Oh, so great to have you on. Well, give me some help, David. How, and all of us, these holidays, I mean, you can't just ignore them. They are what they are.
You can't. And exactly what you said, we think about our past Easters, our past Passovers, our past holidays in general. They're always reminders of our loved ones absent. Mm-hmm. They're not here anymore. And just like you do, so many people have connections to the holidays of this was our last. Mm-hmm. And how their life changed either around the holidays, as yours did, or that idea that you're going to do them this year without them. And for many people, it's another year without them. And between us, look at all sort of the losses we've dealt with. I mean, Gloria, you and I have had children die. You've had a husband die. Heidi, you've had a sibling die. I mean, these familiar losses grab our hearts during the holidays.
Yeah. It's got to be tough for you this year with that dying, right, Heidi?
Absolutely. I mean, I think holidays, like you said, David, it's a way for the family to come together. There's so many family memories, and it's just another reminder that your whole family isn't physically going to be together. And I think also sometimes when you go through firsts, you think, okay, I've gotten through the first, so that's a good thing. And then the second one is going to be easier, and it just changes. There's other things that happen during the second, like the permanence of, okay, this is my life now. This is my reality.
Right. And I think that, holidays are about togetherness, and we are unable to be together with those who have died. We're unable to have the usual togetherness. Yeah. Just because of the pandemic and everything that's happening. Yeah. So there's an isolation on top of an isolation that maybe you're not going to be able to have that Easter dinner, that church service, that Passover dinner, or it's going to be halfway on Zoom. And how do you even do that? So it's a bumpy time. It's a clunky, heartbreaking time. And yet
this anticipation too, David, is something for me. I just started thinking, and now what am I going to do? I'm thinking I've got to plan something. I just can't, the anticipation of,
That's so true. And that happens with all those milestone days. We find the anticipation of the days sometimes can actually be worse than the actual day.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety when you're thinking about the event and getting closer and closer to it.
Because, anxiety, anticipation is often in your mind, you're picturing the worst images.
Mhm.
What a painful day it's going to be. And it may very well be, but you're experiencing the painful day before it's even here. That's sort of that anxiety that comes up.
Well, that makes me kind of smile because I'm thinking, how weird of me. I mean, how many times am I going to hit myself with that, in anticipation? I mean,
Right. And it's a reminder. I always remind people and myself, and I'm also here as, we're bereaved parents, our parents have died, all that. We've already experienced the worst. I'm like, Gloria, if you can go through your child's death, your husband's death, you're going to make it through the holiday.
Yeah.
But we forget that, Heidi, a father, a sibling. I mean, we're going to get through this, but we forget our strength in that. Part of it is remembering the connection with our loved ones, that not to give death any more power than it already has. It can take a physical life. It can't take our love. It can't end our relationship.
I like what you're saying. I mean, we've already been through the worst that there is. I mean, we can do this. I'm always hearing my clients and myself even, how am I going to get through this? But like you said, we've already been through the worst.
Yeah, I remind myself, if I've lived past my son's death,
Yeah.
I can get through anything now.
have you got any ritual ideas that we can do?
Well, I think it's a number of things. First of all, psychologically, I always say to people, make plans if you want, and to know it's different for everybody. Some people are like, I can't do it, especially if it's your first year. If it's your first year and you feel like you've got to cancel the holiday, cancel it. It's going to come around next year.
Except, wait a minute, Heidi, you talk about the siblings. Talk about that with Ken.
Yeah, I guess my thought about that is I think it is really important to be able to cancel, but sometimes when you have kids,
That was my next thing I was going to
they
go.
want to
And,
do the
right.
holiday, right?
Some of us find comfort, enormous comfort in the structure of the rituals. And some of us have to keep the rituals going for others.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I learned this the hard way. It wasn't around Easter or Passover, but after my son died, the first Father's Day, I was in my bed. I didn't want to get up. It was the worst day I had hit after my son died. And my older son came in and went, hey, it's Father's Day. Are we doing something? And I had this shock of, I wasn't going to get out of bed, but his father's still alive. He still deserves a Father's Day.
Right.
And so I needed to do that ritual for him. And it's really the same with these holidays. Sometimes we have to do it for the living.
I like that, David, because, as a child that lost a sibling, I needed to know that I was enough for my parents.
Right.
And that our whole family's life didn't end the day that my brother died.
It's so strange. The other day in one of my online support groups, someone was telling me, and they were very, what's the word? They had found a lovely ritual to honor their son who had died. And they talked about every year they got together for this ritual. And the whole day was the family getting together for him. And we talked about how beautiful that was, a day with him, about how special your son is who died. And I said to her, do you have other kids? And she went, yeah. And I go, did they get a day? And I could see her face go blank. And I'm like, we got to grieve fully and live fully. We cannot forget the living. When your loved one, if your loved one has just died, I get it. It all feels like grief. There's no living, it feels like, in the beginning. But in time, we have to grieve fully and live fully. How many of us know how to do the grieving work, but not the living? Or we know how to do the living and not the grieving. And the holidays are an archetype of how do we bring these two together?
Mhm.
How do you, in this holiday, actively remember your loved ones and bring them to the table, to the service, to the holiday?
How do you?
It could be sharing favorite stories. It could be lighting a candle in their honor. Many times with Passover, there'll be, towards the end, you'll light the anniversary candle of remembering them, a remembrance candle. There's so many ways that we symbolically do things, whether it's the Mass or to remember those who have died and to say, while physically they are gone, we don't forget our past. We don't forget our history. And just on a granular level, here's what both of you know people deal with all the time. You're at your holiday get together and someone goes, don't talk about the person, don't mention them, you're going to ruin the holiday.
Yeah.
And that's a moment we have to be the teachers.
Yeah, sometimes you have to acknowledge somebody who doesn't want to do it and let them drop out. David, we've got a question here. Someone just asked us, what about if you have no children left and no grandchildren and you are alone? Thank you for that question. It's an important question.
Oh my gosh, how hard now during this pandemic for that. So I always say in these moments, you got to make sure you're creating community.
Mhm.
However you do that. I mean, this is a community you two have here. I have online groups. In my online groups, we were together for Hanukkah and Christmas, and we had check-ins because we have, our soul needs connection.
What about your groups? Can people drop in?
So there's groups that I have that are membership that you would join, that you would pay if you need advanced support. You need more these days. I also have a free Facebook group. You can find them all at grief.com.
Okay, good.
But we want to virtually connect with people. And the other thing is, to that person, often we may go, I don't have a son now, I don't have a husband or a wife or something. Reach out to people in your community where maybe you worship together. Reach out to neighbors. Reach out to friends. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we find out after the holidays, two friends were alone and we're like, oh, why didn't they think to connect? But in grief, we don't think about that. So I would say to anyone, if you've got a friend and you know this mistake, we've all dealt with this. We think, oh, their loved one died 2 months ago. They're fine. I don't need to check on them.
Or it's too early.
Or it's too early. You
Yeah.
need to check on people at least the first 2 years.
Mhm.
Checking in with them.
And if you can go to a soup kitchen or do any kind of volunteer, there could be an opportunity to do that too, if you get in touch with your local community and church and whatever. And also don't forget about a wonderful site called Alive Alone, which is a wonderful peer support group for people who have no living children. So you might think about looking at that on the internet.
And so many of the groups that we all know are other places to connect. I mean, there's everything from, my groups, your sites, to option B, Compassionate Friends, so many
And
sites.
you can call your local hospice and
Correct.
ask what
Absolutely.
they've got going on there.
Right. Local hospice, local place of worship.
Mhm.
And you're going to find, the other thing is, I think we have shame around this. Let me just say that. I think we have shame. I always tell people, by the way, at this point in my life, I have done every holiday alone once. The world didn't end.
I didn't even do Christmas once. My husband was in the hospital and the guys, my whole family went off on a vacation that we were supposed to go on. And I didn't have Christmas that year. And I think about that now and think, hey, I didn't have Christmas and I'm still around.
Yeah, there's something we've got this, and Heidi, isn't it crazy? We have this shame around that like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I might be alone.
Yeah.
And it's part of the human experience sometimes.
I just want to talk about a couple of things that we do, and Heidi, maybe you can chime in. We like to put a flower out, a rose or whatever, and reminder, and maybe have a picture at the table. I mean,
Right.
if you feel comfortable with that. Heidi, tell them about your toast, because I really like that.
Oh, I like, doing a toast to my brother. And I always say to people, if you're going to do a toast, if you're a parent, and David, you'll resonate with this, that's going to do a toast in honor of your son that died. Also do a toast like, okay, this toast is for my brother Scott that died, and for those in my family that are still living. And I'm so thankful that they're here. So be inclusive, especially with kids and siblings. Don't just focus on that. And also, if you want somebody's name to be brought up that's died and you feel like it's too new and you don't want to be the one, ask a friend or ask somebody that's going to be there. Can you
That's
please
right.
bring up my brother?
Right. And sometime if we're at a get together with the family,
Mhm.
it shouldn't be this way, but it is. We have to be the ones to let people know,
Mhm.
not only is it okay to mention their name, but we want that.
Mhm.
Sometimes I can remember pre-pandemic, obviously, walking into a get together and just going, I'm so glad I can be with you here. It's been so challenging after my son David died. And I'm thrilled to connect with all of you in this time. And in that moment, it's let them know I can say his name.
Yeah.
You're not going to depress me. I didn't forget.
But if you do cry, it's okay while you're saying it.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's okay. People love it when you're human.
Right.
And, we
Yeah.
want to be human. People want to be human. And one thing I found too early on is that I had to say to people, if I went to dinner or something, to the hostess, whoever's in charge, if I leave the table for a few minutes, don't come and find me. I'll be back. I just need to gather, So,
Right.
David, thank you so much for being on this show today.
Oh, I love you both.
Yeah, give us any lasting tip you want to give, and also tell people where they can find you.
I always say, just let the day be the day, make plans, but be willing to let them go if life changes.
Yeah.
And to know at the end of the day, this is about your relationship with your loved one who died. It may make the people at the get together uncomfortable. You don't have to be digestible for others. You get to be you in grief. People can find me at grief.com. If you look on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, I'm the social media / I am David Kessler. So Facebook.com, I am David Kessler, same on Instagram. Grief.com shows my Tender Hearts group. It shows the free group. And, it doesn't matter where you get support, but get support.
Oh, thank you so much, David.
Thank you both.
Thank you, David. Thank you for being such a bright light in this world. Your spirit shines and your son David's spirit shines as well. So thank you. We love you. We adore you.
And thanks everybody for joining us today. And Heidi and I and David always want to remind you that if you've lost hope during these holidays, please lean on ours till you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.